I, 32M, was married to Trisha, 29F, for the past 3 years, but our story started much earlier. We met through mutual friends at a college reunion 5 years ago. I wasn't even planning to attend that reunion, but my friend Tom insisted because he had just gone through a bad breakup and needed support. I'm glad I went because that's where I met Trisha. The moment I saw her talking to a group of people, I was drawn to her. She wasn't just attractive but had this confidence about her that made her stand out. She worked as a financial consultant at one of the big firms in our city and seemed to have everything figured out. We got talking that night and discovered we had a lot in common, including our love for old movies and hiking. We exchanged numbers and started dating soon after. Trisha was different from anyone I had dated before. She was independent, had her own place, made good money, and didn't seem needy or clingy like my previous girlfriends. My family loved her too, especially my mom, who was always worried I would end up with someone who just wanted to be a housewife. After dating for a year, I knew she was the one. I planned this elaborate proposal during a hiking trip to her favorite spot. She said yes immediately and we started planning our wedding. We wanted a big celebration because both our families were pretty well off and Trisha had always dreamed of a fancy wedding. Everything was perfect until a week before our wedding. I had my bachelor party at my house because I didn't want anything crazy, just a few close friends and family members having drinks and playing poker. My brother Michael, 27M, was there too. He and Trisha had always gotten along well, which I thought was great at the time. That night changed everything. I went upstairs to get more drinks from our storage room and heard voices coming from the guest bedroom. The door was slightly open and I could hear Trisha and Michael talking in hushed tones. At first, I thought maybe they were planning some surprise for me, but then I heard Trisha say she was pregnant and it had to be Michael's because we had been careful. I felt like someone had punched me in the gut. I pushed the door open and found them sitting on the bed close together. Trisha jumped up immediately, but Michael just sat there looking guilty. When I asked what was going on, Trisha started crying and admitted she had been sleeping with Michael for the past 2 months. She claimed it started at my parents' anniversary party when they both got drunk and ended up hooking up in our car. I remembered that night clearly because I had left early due to work the next day. Trisha said she tried to end it after that, but Michael kept pursuing her and she was weak. Michael finally spoke up and said he had fallen in love with Trisha but knew she didn't feel the same way. I was in shock. These two people I trusted most had betrayed me in the worst way possible. I couldn't even process the fact that Trisha was pregnant with my brother's child. I told them both to get out of my house and called off the wedding the next day. My parents were devastated and confused because I couldn't bring myself to tell them the real reason. Trisha disappeared completely for a week. No calls, no messages, nothing. I spent that week in a daze, barely eating or sleeping. My sister Emily, 35F, was the only one I told the truth to because I needed someone to talk to. She was furious at Michael but also said that Trisha seemed genuinely in love with me and might have just made a stupid mistake. When Trisha finally came back, she told me she had gotten an abortion because she couldn't live with the guilt of carrying Michael's child. She begged me to forgive her and said Michael meant nothing to her. She even showed me messages where she had told Michael to leave her alone because she only wanted me. I was still processing everything when Trisha's mother Linda, 55F, showed up at my apartment crying. Linda and I had always gotten along well. She was a single mother who had raised Trisha after her husband died in a car accident when Trisha was just 12. Linda told me how Trisha had struggled with depression and abandonment issues since losing her father. According to Linda, Trisha had been in therapy for years trying to deal with her fear of commitment. She said Trisha sabotaged relationships when they got too serious because she was afraid of losing people like she lost her father. Linda begged me to give Trisha another chance, saying she had never seen her daughter as happy as she was with me. Linda even offered to pay for our entire wedding since we had lost all our deposits. She said she had been saving this money for Trisha's wedding since her husband died and wanted us to use it for a fresh start. I was touched by her gesture but still unsure about forgiving Trisha. What followed were weeks of intense conversations with Trisha. She seemed genuinely remorseful and agreed to cut all contact with Michael. She even suggested we move to a different city for a fresh start, but I didn't want to leave my job. My parents were strongly against me taking her back, especially my mom, who said she could never look at Trisha the same way again. But after a lot of thinking and seeing how hard Trisha was trying to make things right, I decided to give her another chance. We had a small wedding ceremony instead of the big event we had planned. Only close family and a few friends attended. Michael didn't show up, which was a relief because I wasn't ready to face him. The first 3 years of our marriage were actually really good. Trisha was the perfect wife, attentive, loving, and completely dedicated to making our marriage work. She even switched jobs to avoid running into Michael, who worked in the same industry. I started to think that maybe forgiving her had been the right choice and that people really could change. We bought a house together, started planning for children, and everything seemed perfect. Trisha's business was doing well and she often worked late hours with clients, which I never questioned because I trusted her completely. I thought we had moved past all the drama and were finally happy. But last month everything I believed about my marriage turned out to be a lie. I had a business trip scheduled for a week, but it got cut short because our client canceled some meetings. I decided to surprise Trisha by coming home early. That turned out to be the biggest mistake and blessing of my life. I found her in our bed with my cousin Uncle Robert, 38M. Robert was my favorite uncle's son and someone I had grown up with. He was like an older brother to me and often visited us for dinner or game nights. Finding them together hurt even more than catching her with Michael because I had trusted both of them completely. But what happened next changed everything. When I started yelling at them, Robert very calmly said there was no need to get so worked up because he had already paid her. Those words didn't make sense to me at first. Then he showed me his phone with messages between them discussing rates and services. That's when my entire world crashed down around me. Update 1. It's been 3 weeks since I discovered the truth about Trisha and my life has completely fallen apart. After I exposed Trisha's past to both our families, things got even more complicated than I could have imagined. I had to move out of our house because I couldn't stand being in the same space where she had betrayed me so many times. I'm staying in a small apartment now and trying to make sense of everything that's happened. Last week, I got a call from my sister Emily telling me that Trisha had checked herself into the hospital after having some kind of breakdown. Apparently, she took a bunch of pills but her mother found her in time. Linda called Emily because she knew I had blocked her number. She wanted me to know that Trisha had tried to harm herself and that I needed to come see her. I refused immediately. Emily tried to guilt trip me by saying that whatever Trisha did, she was still my wife and I should at least check on her. But I couldn't bring myself to do it. How could I face someone who had lied to me for so many years? Emily doesn't understand because she doesn't know the half of it. The escort work was just the tip of the iceberg. What really knocked me sideways was when Michael showed up at my apartment last week. I hadn't spoken to him since the wedding drama 3 years ago. He looked terrible, like he hadn't slept in days. At first, I tried to shut the door in his face but he pushed his way in saying he had something important to tell me. That's when he dropped the biggest bombshell yet. He confessed that he had known about Trisha's escort work even before she got involved with him. Apparently, he had used her services once about 4 years ago, before I even met her. He didn't recognize her when I introduced her as my girlfriend because back then she went by the name Crystal and had different colored hair. Michael said he only realized who she really was a few months after I started dating her. He ran into her at a bar when I wasn't around and she recognized him. Instead of coming clean to me, she convinced him to keep quiet by sleeping with him for free. The pregnancy drama before the wedding was just another one of her manipulation tactics. I completely lost it when he told me this. My own brother had known the truth about my wife for years and said nothing. He tried to justify it by saying he was afraid of losing me as a brother if he told me the truth. He also claimed that Trisha had threatened to tell everyone that he was a regular client of escorts if he ever exposed her. I kicked him out of my apartment and told him I never wanted to see his face again. Our parents are devastated that their sons aren't speaking anymore. Mom keeps calling and trying to arrange a family dinner to sort things out, but I've told her it's not happening. Some betrayals can't be forgiven. Things got even worse when I found out about Trisha's secret apartment. The landlord of a building across town contacted me about some outstanding rent payments. I had no idea what he was talking about at first. Then he mentioned that the apartment was Trisha's home office where she did her consulting work. I remembered that place. Trisha had rented it 2 years ago saying she needed a quiet space to work with clients away from home. I even helped her pay the rent sometimes, thinking I was supporting her career. The landlord said he was calling me because Trisha hadn't paid rent for 2 months and wasn't answering his calls. When I went to check out the apartment, I felt sick to my stomach. The place was set up like a luxury hotel room with a huge bed, mood lighting, and a fully stocked bar. There were things in the drawers that made it clear what kind of work really happened there. I had been such a fool, helping pay for the place where my wife cheated on me with countless men. Yesterday, things reached a new low when Trisha's mother Linda showed up at my workplace. She started screaming in the middle of the office about how I had ruined her daughter's life. She claimed that Trisha only got into escort work because Linda's second husband had abused her as a teenager. Apparently, Trisha needed money to escape that situation but got trapped in the lifestyle because the money was too good. Security had to escort Linda out while my coworkers watched in shock. My boss called me into his office afterward and suggested I take some time off to deal with my personal issues. It was humiliating, but maybe some time away from work will help clear my head. Robert reached out to apologize, but his apology just made everything worse. He said he thought I knew about Trisha's work since apparently so many people in our social circle had used her services over the years. He mentioned names of cousins and family friends that made me realize I had been living in complete ignorance. Some people have suggested that I should have kept Trisha's past private instead of exposing her to everyone. They say I'm partly responsible for her suicide attempt. But I couldn't keep carrying the weight of her lies. She had fooled everyone into thinking she was this successful, professional woman while living a completely different life behind our backs. I'm starting to question every moment of our relationship. Was anything real? Did she ever actually love me, or was I just a convenient cover for her real life? The sweet, loving wife I thought I knew seems like a character she created to fool me. I don't even know who the real Trisha is anymore. Right now, I'm just trying to get through each day. I've started drinking more than I should, but it's the only way I can sleep without my mind racing through all the lies and betrayals. My lawyer says the divorce should be straightforward since we had a prenup, but I know Trisha won't go down without a fight. She has too much to lose now that everyone knows the truth. Update 2. 2 months have passed since everything blew up, And just when I thought things couldn't get more complicated, they did. Last week, I received an anonymous email that turned my world upside down again. Someone claiming to be Trisha's former pimp sent me dozens of videos of her with various clients. The email said he was angry because Trisha had stopped paying him his cut of her earnings after meeting me, but kept working independently. The videos were dated throughout our entire marriage. Some were even from just a few months ago. What shocked me the most wasn't just seeing my wife with other men, it was seeing how different she was with them. The Trisha I knew was somewhat shy and sweet, always letting me take the lead in our relationship. But in these videos, she was completely different, confident, assertive, almost aggressive. She had a whole different way of talking and acting that I had never seen before. The email also included a list of her regular clients, and I recognized many names. These weren't just random men, they were prominent figures in our city. Business owners, politicians, even a judge who had been to our house for dinner once. The man who officiated at our wedding was on that list. It made me physically sick to realize how many people had known about my wife's real life while I remained clueless. After 3 weeks of ignoring her attempts to contact me, Trisha finally managed to reach me through our mutual friend Alex. She asked to meet at a coffee shop to explain everything. Against my better judgment, I agreed. I needed answers. When we met, Trisha looked nothing like the polished, professional wife I was used to seeing. She seemed older somehow, tired. She admitted that she had been living a double life for years. The personality I knew, the loving, somewhat passive wife, was carefully crafted to be what she thought I wanted. She had studied my previous girlfriend's social media profiles before we met to understand my type. She told me she started escorting in college to pay her bills but kept doing it because the money was addictive. By the time we met, she was making more from escorting than from her day job as a financial consultant. She claimed she did fall in love with me eventually but couldn't stop her other life because she was addicted to the thrill and the money. Then she dropped another bombshell. The pregnancy and abortion story with Michael was completely fabricated. She had used this tactic before with other men who discovered her escort work. Create a more forgivable sin to hide the bigger one. She said men were more likely to forgive cheating with one person than finding out their partner was a sex worker. The whole thing had been an elaborate performance. She picked Michael because she knew I would eventually forgive my own brother, making it easier to move past the incident. She had timed the fake pregnancy reveal perfectly, close enough to the wedding that I would be more likely to forgive her rather than cancel everything. Trisha admitted she never planned to stop escorting. The separate apartment, the late-night client meetings, the business trips, everything had been arranged to maintain her double life. She even had a second phone and email account that I never knew about. The worst part was learning that our entire relationship was based on calculation rather than genuine connection. She chose me because I had a good job, came from a respectable family, and seemed trusting enough to make a good cover for her real life. She said she grew to care for me but never enough to give up her other life. I've started divorce proceedings and surprisingly, Trisha isn't contesting anything. Her mother has finally stopped trying to contact me after my lawyer sent her a cease and desist letter. Most of our mutual friends have chosen sides, with most supporting me after learning the full truth. A few still think I was cruel to expose her past, but I've cut contact with them too. The videos are now circulating in certain circles in our city, despite my lawyer's attempts to contain them. Trisha's former pimp apparently sent them to several people. I almost feel bad about how this has affected her, but then I remember how she systematically deceived me and everyone else for years. My trust in people has been completely shattered. Every time I think about starting to date again, I remember how easily I was fooled for years. My therapist says it will take time to heal, but right now, I can't imagine ever trusting anyone enough to have a relationship again. Update 3, it's been 6 months now and my divorce was finally finalized last week. Trisha moved to a different city after the scandal became too much to handle locally. I heard through mutual friends that she's working as an actual financial consultant now at a smaller firm. Her mother still tries to reach out occasionally through different people, sending messages about how Trisha has changed and is getting her life together, but I've maintained strict no contact with all of them. The videos that her former pimp sent ended up causing a huge scandal in our city. Several of her prominent clients were forced to resign from their positions or relocate their families. The judge who was on her client list had to step down. The businessman who used to come to our dinner parties with his wife lost both his family and his company's board position. I almost feel bad about how many lives were affected, but then I remember how all these men knew I was her husband and still used her services. Last month, I ran into Michael at our parents' anniversary party. I had told our parents I wouldn't attend if he was there, but they lied to me saying he wouldn't come. As soon as he tried to approach me, I walked out. Our mother ran after me crying, saying we needed to be a family again and that Michael was truly sorry. I told her that family doesn't do what Michael did to me, and I haven't spoken to any of them since. Robert moved abroad for a job opportunity in Dubai, which is probably for the best. Before leaving, he sent me a long email detailing every interaction he'd had with Trisha, thinking it would help me find closure. Instead, it just made me realize how many family events and gatherings had been covers for their meetings. Even our Christmas dinner last year, Trisha had snuck away with him while I was helping Mom in the kitchen. The whole experience has made me completely reconsider who I can trust. I've cut off most of our old friend group because I found out many of them had known about Trisha's double life. Some had even covered for her at times, telling me they were having girls' nights when Trisha was actually meeting clients. I'm focusing entirely on my career now. I got a promotion at work after throwing myself into projects to avoid thinking about everything. I've moved into a new house in a different part of town where nobody knows my story. The only person from my old life I still talk to is my sister Emily, and even that's limited because she keeps suggesting I should try dating again. Trisha sent me one final email before moving. She wrote that she was getting professional help and was finally being honest with herself and others. She apologized for everything but admitted she probably would have continued her double life if she hadn't been caught. She said the lifestyle was too addictive, both the money and the thrill of getting away with it. At least she was finally honest about something. I didn't respond and blocked her new email address too. Some of my remaining friends think I should have handled things differently or kept her secret, especially given what happened to all those families when the truth came out. But I don't regret exposing everything. The lies and betrayal needed to come out, no matter who got hurt in the process. I couldn't be the only one living with the truth while everyone else maintained their perfect fake lives. I've started rebuilding my life piece by piece. It's a slow process, but it's better than living a lie. The trust issues will probably take years to work through, but at least now I know who I really am and what I stand for. I won't let anyone make me question my reality ever again.